welcome. This channel is Infinite Love. Here we talk about spirituality, holistic health, meditation, and esoteric perspectives on both health, well-being, spirituality, as well as what's going on in the world. So if these topics interest you, please hit subscribe. I'll post some new videos much more frequently now, and I would love to share with you. So this particular video today that I'm making is a really important topic, but something that not that many people are really talking about, at least in a lot of the spiritual circles that I run in. It's you can talk about it with some people, but a lot of people don't really want to talk about this sort of stuff because, well, you'll see it's kind of the shadow, the stuff that gets swept under the rug very easily. But about 9 years ago, I took a healing course, and in that healing course, I've taken many healing courses, but this one particular healing course is something called Access Consciousness. They talk about how 98% of our thoughts, beliefs, thoughts, especially our thoughts, don't come from us. What we believe is more of a choice, but the thoughts that get implanted initially, 98% of those thoughts don't come from us. And the question is, if 98% of people, the average person, thoughts are not coming from them, where are they coming from? So that's something to ponder for a second. 98% not coming from you, where is it coming from? And the answer to that, of course, is the collective consciousness, your friends, your family, the media. But beyond that is there's another group, and that group might not be so obvious to the average person, but I would also say that another place that some of these thoughts come from are actually subtle realms around us, right? So there's all sorts of different subtle realms, different dimensions around us, and we are influenced by all these realms because we are in all these realms at the same time as we are here in the physical realm. There are subtle realms that are surrounding us that have great influence on this world. And there are many spiritual traditions that talk about something along the lines of, say, the archons in the Gnostic Christian text, or demons, or another more modern word, which is actually, I think, the best word that I like to use for them, because it's really what a lot of these beings are, that are at least negative or negatively impacting people, are energetic parasites. Because we understand what a physical parasite is, like a stomach bug. But an energy parasite is basically using and sucking off the prana of an individual, or the subtle energy of a person, and draining that person of their energy. And the vast majority of energy parasites are feeding off of negative emotions, so fear, worry, anger, any sort of negative emotion which is strong. The energy parasites love that because that's what they understand. They resonate with that energy. So there's many types of beings, and the same way that there's many types of animals. If you go to the park or you go to the forest, there's many types of spirits. There's greatly divine, angelic sorts of beings who just radiate love. There's spirit guides. There's nature spirits. And then, but what I'm mostly talking about in this video is the beings that are causing the issues, causing the problems. Because the vast majority of people have, at some point, had to work through various issues like self-worth, feeling bad about ourselves, or feeling unworthy, or feeling this disconnection, or loneliness, or depression, or whatever it may be. And the question is, why are we so susceptible to seemingly, feeling so negative about life? And what can we do about it, right? So what I've seen is that the mind is a lot like an antenna. One of the first messages I got 10 years ago when I was first waking up in the jungle, in the Amazon jungle, and having a spiritual awakening there, was I needed to learn to tune, then use my mind. And in the dream, and I was like, to, and it said, to tune. And then this figure, just turned and smiled at me and said, and do it soon too. And then he walked off. And to tune, what does that mean? It means the same way that, if you have a radio dial, you're tuning into certain frequencies. It's the same way with our consciousness. We're tuning in to very specific bandwidths of information. And there's many bandwidths of information. So the issue is that, unfortunately, much of humanity is tuned into various more astral sort of realms where the information isn't necessarily positive, and where we can more easily be susceptible to things like negative psychic attacks. And there's this really great book I have. So I work with a beautiful system of living flower essences called Flora Live. So if you live in the U.S., you can check that out, floralive.com. This book, The Floral Hand of God by Brent Davis, an amazing book, has a lot of great insights, not only into flowers, but also into spirituality. And in this book, he talks on page 95, he talks about something called the Nag Hammadi codices. And these are from the 3rd and 4th centuries AD, and they are ancient Gnostic Christian texts, so very, very old Christian texts back from the beginning of Christianity. And they devote a huge amount of time actually talking about something called the archons. Now, archons, it's a word I don't really like to use because it means like master, and it's kind of like giving them power, I feel. So it's not a word I would intentionally try to use very much. But I'm just going to quote what this says because I think it's an interesting quote. So he says, "He was amazed to learn that perhaps 1/5 of the intelligible information that in the NHC, the Nag Hammadi codices, concerns the origin, methods, and motives of archons, who appear to be identical to the extraterrestrials of modern ufology. In Gnostic cosmology, the ultimate purpose of archons is to act as a test for humanity." Mr. Lash continues, and this is a quote, "Although archons do exist physically, the real danger they pose to humanity is not invasion of the planet, but invasion of the mind. The archons are intrapsychic mind parasites who access human consciousness through telepathy and stimulation. They infect our imagination, use the power of make-believe for deception and confusion. Their pleasure is in deceit for its own sake, without a particular aim or purpose. They are robotic in nature, incapable of independent thought or choice, and have no particular agenda except to live vicariously through human beings. Bizarrely, they are able to pretend an effect on humans which they do not really have. For instance, they cannot access human genetics, but they can pretend to do so in such a way that humans fall for the pretended act as if stage events were taken for real. In this respect, archons are the ultimate hoaxers. This is the essence of archonic intrusion, as I call it. The trick is, if humanity falls under the delusion of superhuman power, it becomes as good as real, a self-fulfilling delusion." So there's a lot more information in this book about the shadow. I want to just read that particular part. So what I've seen is both in myself as I woke up spiritually, and also I work with people. I do healing and I do soul catalyst work to help people learn their soul purpose. And what I've seen both at first in myself and also with others is that as you open up psychically, that you can open up to many, many different things. And of course, you can receive amazing divine guidance from beautiful angelic beings. But there's also kind of this almost, I want to say it's like this naive optimism that any spirit you connect with must be for the greater good, must be a kind spirit, must be a loving spirit. And this is something that's not really talked about, I think, that often, at least, maybe in the spiritual community that I was around. It wasn't talked about as much as I feel it deserves. Because you can absolutely be communicating with a legitimate spirit, but it doesn't mean it is an angelic being. And the more psychically open you are, the more easy also these beings can communicate with you telepathically. So it's a bit of a double-edged sword to open up psychically. And I think this is maybe some of the reason there's actually so much fear around spirituality, because people actually maybe on some subconscious level know it's like you're opening up kind of a whole new world, a whole new reality when you open up spiritual channels. And some of those realities aren't realities you really want to tune into. So it's easier just to cocoon yourself in and shut off the spiritual and forget it's there. But that is also missing a lot, because we are spiritual beings and we can connect to profound states of love, to profound states of consciousness, to this inner bliss, to this inner feeling of interconnectedness with everything. To really connect to our own soul, there's no greater satisfaction than to connect more deeply to ourselves. So by throwing out spirituality, that's not the answer. That's not what we're looking for. So the question is, how do we deal with the archons or the psychic parasites or whatever they are? And I would venture to say that a lot of the beliefs that we have, there's some sticking point within your own mind, within your own consciousness, or you couldn't be in resonance with that thought. So there must be some sticking point, but at the same time, my experience is that there's a lot of these different beings around that are trying to keep humanity down. They're trying to keep the level of spiritual awareness suppressed, because then they can more easily survive and thrive off of basically parasiting off of us. So this is what they are doing, and so they're compounding the problem, right? They're like taking our egos and making it amplified in effect, which can be a blessing because we can see everything more clearly, right? We can see everything more strong, but it also can be a big challenge because sometimes they can cause a lot of confusion. They can actually exacerbate problems and make them much worse than they are. So I've seen, people I work with, they have these different voices sometimes, and it's almost like, in some cases, it could even be described as like a mild case of what the mainstream would call schizophrenia. But I don't actually believe in schizophrenia. What I've seen from experience is that people who are actually having these voices, that if with training, they could learn to tune their minds to a different place, and these voices would not be bothering them the same way. Or if they did come up, you could easily shift away from it and not follow the negative impulse, because schizophrenia is marked not just by voices in the head, but also like kind of these very mean, often scattered and very dysfunctional voices, right? Sometimes violent. So these beings that are working in these subtle realms, this is their impact. And I think what isn't often said is that the vast majority of us are impacted by this. It's not just like a tiny portion of humanity. There are people who aren't in spirituality and they're still being impacted on a subconscious level. They're just not awake enough consciously to realize the impact that all these subtle beings are playing on us all the time. So I think it's really important to notice that this is there. There's this guy, and I might be missaying his name, but I think he's named Jerry Marzinski. And he has a technique that he created. He was like a psychiatrist, and he was, taught that schizophrenia is because of a brain chemical imbalance. But he was actually, a sincere doctor, a sincere psychiatrist who wanted to know the truth. And what he was actually finding through a lot of research and through to his own shock was that there are actually these beings that were influencing many of these people who have schizophrenia and giving them like contradictory instructions. And they would get confused, and sometimes they would start to follow those voices. So what he was seeing was that actually a really simple way that you can step back from these voices is just to say, if you are someone who suffers from like a lot of negative beliefs of low self-esteem, low self-worth, is the next time that comes up, like say you have a voice that says, oh, you're no good, you're never going to succeed, blah, blah, blah. He says, you just say, that's a lie. And you don't argue with him more. You just say, that's a lie. And then just anytime this comes up, something is coming up, negative thought, just that's a lie. Just don't dismiss it. Another way to do this is the way I actually learned about 9 years ago in studying a book called The Course in Miracles was a lesson in The Course in Miracles, which is at the time was a huge help for me because I was struggling with having really an untuned mind that could pick up all sorts of different channels, and also I had a lot of fear that was keeping me locked in fear a lot, and I was working through a lot of inner shadow work. And what I would use would be the simple phrase, these conflict thoughts are meaningless. So this is from A Course in Miracles. These conflict thoughts are meaningless. Just take away the power. Call it a lie. Call it meaningless. You don't have to constantly be arguing with it. Just realize that there are these voices trying to convince you, and the less power you give it to it, then that gives room for something else to emerge. Does that by itself automatically give you a good sense of self-worth or self-esteem or worthiness or whatever issue that you're struggling with? No, it doesn't. But the first step is to detune from the lies a bit, and that creates the space then to really heal more deeply, and to not believe every negative thought we think, to not get sucked into these negative thoughts that pretend to be so important, but that are actually just ways to distract us from the brilliant nature of what's beyond those thoughts, beyond the garbled voice in the head. Because what does meditation teach, right? Most meditations teach detach from your thoughts, or just focus on one thought, like a mantra or something, but detach from all the other thoughts and just keep staying in the present moment. So why would meditation work so well? It works so well because 98% of our thoughts aren't coming from us. The deeper thoughts that are arising from intuition are coming from the heart. Those are also possible, but those have a different feel to them. They have a different frequency, a different vibration. They come when we're more attuned to this more subtle place within us. So this is the video, I think, for today. Just if you have a lot of thoughts, a lot of beliefs, just realize a lot of them aren't so serious, they aren't yours, and just detach from them. Don't make them your problem. Let them just come and go like clouds in the sky. And as you do that, a space will open up within you. And also, a lot of these subtle beings, once they see that you're not really falling for the tricks as much, of what they're putting out there, they'll eventually kind of start to back off a bit, because they get frustrated. They want their tricks to work so that they can feed off your fear, off your worry, off your negativity. So as you retune your mind, then the problems get easier and easier, and it's much more easy to see what's really coming from a deeper intuition and what's coming from somewhere else. Okay, so that is the video on implanted thoughts, beliefs, energy parasites, and understanding the shadow forces. That's sort of a good intro. I hope you guys learned something. If you did, please leave a comment, and also, this is a new channel. Please subscribe. I'm planning to put a lot more content up on here, and give me feedback about how this affected you. And many blessings to all of you. Have a beautiful day, evening, or night, and infinite love.